Hey, welcome to the Power Knot. I am your host, Juan Boyce. Today we have our guest, Brian Jenney. But before we get to that, let me introduce myself. My name is Juan Boyce. I am a self-taught software engineer. I've been writing code since the age of 11, and I have worked for everything from billion-dollar brands like Microsoft and Bank of America down to early stage startups. I have over 20 years of experience working as a software engineer doing web apps. And in that time, I have learned and done things very well. And so I am pivoting over to leadership, which is just like tying the perfect bow tie because it requires structure and precision. So now that we've got our introductions out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about a little bit of housekeeping here. This is a live stream right here. So I would like you to put some comments down in the questions in the comments down below, and we will get to those when we can. So that's great. So let me tell you, today's topic is what it really takes to empower the next generation of engineers. And our today's guest is Brian Jenney, program owner of Parsity, a coding bootcamp known for its rigorous mentorship, real world complexity, and a 92% placement rate. But Brian isn't just teaching people how to code, he's helping them to get hired in one of the toughest markets we've ever seen. His students aren't smashing the easy apply button. They are learning in public, building relationships, and landing roles through strategies that actually work. Brian's journey into software started at 30 with a family and a non-traditional background. That experience fuels everything he's built, from his tough love curriculum to the hundreds of one-on-one calls he's had with aspiring engineers. He's not selling a dream, he's offering clarity, challenge, and a path forward that actually prepares people for what's next. If there's anything you'd like to change, whoops. This is the if you are interested in a software a career as a software engineer and you're wondering how to break in, this is the show for you. So let's welcome Brian Jenney.
Man, what a hell of an intro, man. That's got me fired up. Thank you. Happy to be here. Really excited. I'm also a bit nervous too, to be completely honest, because
Oh, that's okay to be nervous.
I've
That's
never done one of these live. I learned how to do this last night, so I'm looking
Oh
forward.
wow, last night. Well, that's good because that'll make it very, very easy for me to teach you something
Okay,
you already
sweet.
know. But no worries about that. Well, before we get to it, do you have a story behind the tie that you've selected?
The story behind the tie, pink is really kind of a weird story. I've always worn dark clothes my whole life, and during the pandemic, I was like a little depressed, like most people, and I was like, I need something to brighten up my day. I moved to this new neighborhood. It's really dark here in the mornings, and I'm like, I can't wear black in this neighborhood. I look like a burglar in the morning, running at 6 a.m. People don't know me yet. Let me wear something that looks so non-threatening. What would that be? A large pink sweatshirt. And so I just got this rotating like pink sweatshirts, and people laughed and thought it was funny. But I said, but the funny thing is, no one, when they look at me, it just immediately disarms them, right? When
Yes.
you wear a big pink sweatshirt, it's hard. You can't take yourself too seriously, and neither can other people. And that kind of started me on this like whole pink thing. I thought, let me get a pink bow tie.
Okay, okay. Well, that's great. And today's tie that I have, coincidentally, is well, it's pink and blue.
Yeah.
I'm on a reversible tie kick right now. I actually ordered a normal number of ties. Don't ask my wife how many that is, but I have uh, uh, this tie, which when it's tied, it will be pink. So
Oh, nice.
that will
Okay.
be great.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
let's go ahead and start the start this. This is so great. So let me ask you this: what inspired you to get into uh, Parsity, and what gap were you trying to fill in the boot camp world?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So Parsity, the owner reached out to me from LinkedIn. I write a lot on LinkedIn, as you may know, and that kind of led me to a conversation with the previous owner, a guy named Aaron Hayslip, who actually had the podcast that I now run. And so he's like, "Hey man, I love what you're doing. Have you ever thought about like, helping me with my boot camp?" And I knew of it. I've met some grads from there. I'm like, these people are really smart. They're doing all the right things. I knew the curriculum. He's like, the problem is, I need help with the curriculum and basically helping with marketing. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. And the gap I saw was that, I mean, I was hiring people from boot camps as a manager, and I was like, some of the people, I'm like, what is going on here? There's a massive disconnect, a delta between the core skills that I saw as necessary and what they were learning. And then I saw Parsity is like, oh, they're teaching things like testing, how not just like pure front end, like not just basic front end, but full stack testing, kind of the first principles of software design, and thinking more like a software engineer, building more difficult projects, things that were gonna more prepare them for actually working on a team. I thought this is what I would want to go to, and that led me to do it with him. He said, "Hey, I'm kind of done with this boot camp thing. I want to go pursue other interests. I've been doing this for like 5 years or so." And he's like, "Do you want to take it over?" And I'm thinking, uh, sure, okay. And then we went through the whole seller financing thing, and I took over this program and have since kind of morphed it into something even more different than when I took it over. So now it's a lot more one-on-one mentorship focused and super small. That's, I think, our secret. We're really small. What we do cannot scale.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. I like that what you're doing is, you're more concerned with providing a quality product. It's quality over quantity, right?
100%.
Because it doesn't necessarily scale at this point, but I think that's what we want is we want you don't necessarily just want to take people's money because they pay. You want to make sure that they're able to get into these jobs and do very well.
Yeah, and also like because we work with them pretty closely, like just selfishly, I don't really want to work with people that are just there because like we don't want the get rich quick scheme crowd, and we don't want to give people a false narrative idea that, oh, 3 months and we're going to get you a job. That's just not the reality anymore. So we have a really high quality of people we've gotten because I think of our messaging and because it's more of a personalized brand. So I'm really happy with actually having a really small group of people, which still makes this, it's a business, so we still have to be profitable. But because it's small, focused, it's still profitable because we don't have all that overhead like marketing and ads, things that we don't run ads. We do everything organically.
Okay, that's good. You've said that learning to code is step zero. So what comes
Yeah.
after that? What does it really take to become a software engineer?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you think like what we do all day as software engineers, it's like, yeah, like coding is kind of just table stakes, right? But I'm sure like as you got into more senior positions, maybe I'll flip it to you too. Like, what did you notice when you got to more senior positions? Like, what were some of the skills that were kind of silently expected of you at that point?
You know what? It's very interesting that you flipped it to me. I learned to code by age 11.
Oh
So
wow.
if I were and the thing about that is I was writing real programs by that time. I was writing little screensavers, little games. I was like a middle school hacker because I was like I
Awesome.
Gosh, let me tell you, with middle school, I I figured out how to put spaces in file names, which basically made it impossible to um, address the file names from the
Yeah,
command
yeah.
line. So I installed Doom on the computers and made it so, and I made a little batch file that made it that would make it launch. But then when they tried to delete it, they couldn't because it would just throw an error
Oh, it's
there. And that was crazy. But yeah, but the thing
cool.
about coding, I knew how to code by the time I got into college. I had already been coding for 7 years at least by that point, right? And I thought I was ready to go into the job market as a software engineer. But the fact is that knowing how to code is just table stakes, right?
Yeah.
Building all of those programs, even though I did build pretty impressive programs on my own, I wasn't prepared to work on a team. I wasn't
Yeah.
prepared to um, um, understand what other people's visions were and be able to translate that into code.
Mhm.
So what really, really humbled me is I started off in tech support, but what's great is it gave me a foundation for software engineering that really goes beyond coding,
Mhm.
because it's really about communicating with people. It's really about being able to understand not just what they're literally telling you, but you want to ask why. Like, what is it that you're really trying to do? And that's really where the magic happens, because definitely have been times where um um there have been times where the ask has been one thing, but what they really wanted was this other thing that they didn't really think was possible. And then
Yes.
when I can deliver that other thing, I'm really excelling in my craft. And but the thing is, when I was coding on my own, I always knew what I wanted.
That's a great point, right? Yeah, like when I'm building something on for my own, I don't really care how the UI looks at all. I'm like more focused on the functionality, and I'm not tripping on yeah how it looks to the user. But a big thing we teach at Parsity is communication. Like we understand like that's a major differentiator because like as a manager, I've done so many interviews with people, and they can be really smart, but when they come into the interview, especially, you have that small window of time to establish a connection and trust. And if you can code really fast, like that's great. Like, but there's a reason why competitive programmers don't like have all the job opportunities because we're hiring humans at the end of the day too. So like, yeah, knowing how to like communicate technical ideas, knowing how to work within a team, even things like as simple as even like things like using Git on a team level, like understanding that. Like we have
Mm,
a team of interns right now doing that, and one of the biggest things we're having to figure out now is how do I use Git with like 5, 10 people, right? Like that's really difficult, and that's something that you're going to either learn on the job immediately and feel like freaked out about, or we can hopefully give you some of those skills and a little bit of like a stepping stool to do that in a low stakes environment beforehand. But yeah, we work on a lot of personal development, honestly, too, like time management. How do you learn stuff fast? Because just because you learn JavaScript here, you might be using Go or C# or Java on the job, and the next job might require a different set of skills. So learning how to learn is a really important meta skill, I feel like, nowadays.
yeah, absolutely. Adaptation is extremely important, especially since you're teaching JavaScript, and JavaScript, as you know, most popular language, but there
Mhm.
are just so many flavors of JavaScript, whether you're working
Yeah.
with Vue or React or Angular, and then that's just on the front end. I haven't even touched on Node and all
Yep.
the testing frameworks and all the other stuff. And of course, JavaScript syntax is let's say very varied.
Yes.
You can get very deep into that. Uh,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
let me ask you this though. Like me, you didn't take a traditional path into tech, right? You
Yeah.
started coding later in life after having a family, and you've been open about how that shaped you. How did your own transition influence the way that you've built Parsity?
Yeah, as a career changer, I realize, well, now I realize in retrospect, like finding the time was one of the most difficult things. Like I had the kids, I had a job, I had a long commute. And just to be really personal, I just got sober too. So I was dealing with all these adult things that you're dealing with. Maybe some people's story isn't as salacious. Maybe they're just like, I have kids and I have, my wife, my husband, and I'm stressed out. It's like, where do you find the time and how do you keep the motivation going? Now, for me, uh, that was the most difficult thing. I had, after you get out of college or whatever, high school, you may not have those same skills that you built up. You're used to studying by looking at a book and you read the book and then you're like, cool, now I know the thing. That's how you were taught. And then with coding, I realized after almost a year of failing that I'm learning the wrong way. I read a whole book on HTML and I'm like, why did I do that? And I'm just reading this book diligently and taking notes and thinking this is the wrong way to learn. And then I started building lots of janky stuff, but stuff that I found to be fun. And then I made a pretty pretty rigorous schedule. Was like, okay, in the morning I'll wake up half an hour earlier, and I had everything planned out for what I would do that day or that week. I'm like, I'm going to build this piece today. I'm going to build this. I'm going to research this on this date. And that like led me further and further. And I kept getting that positive feedback. And that's what we see. I mean, generally, this is not like groundbreaking stuff, but I noticed that most people that fail at coding boot camps that I've worked at, they tend to have no schedule. They have way too much faith in themselves, this blind optimism that like, I'll just do it all. I'll just do a 12-hour Udemy course on the weekend. And that never works out. And so what we take a lot of time now in Parsity doing is like, before you even touch any code, we don't even want you touching code until we have a schedule that you're going to commit to. And we understand your pitfalls, the things that are likely to screw you up, and understand kind of you as a person and where you're going to fit this time in, and then have a check-in to make sure that every week you're hitting the KPIs that you've set for yourself. Because if not, we can give you all the information in the world. All the information is free. I mean, you can go on YouTube.
Oh yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, you don't need us to teach you how to code. What you need us for is really beyond that. Like, okay, let's make sure you actually finish what you say. You're learning the skills that actually are going to get you marketable and hireable, and then actually know how to get and pass an interview.
Yeah, and then along that line, why tech in the first place? You know, being that you were already 30 and working, you
Yeah,
presumably could have picked anything. A lot of people like to go become lawyers. Why
you're
tech?
right. I was thinking paralegal at one point. So here's the thing. I was driving around the Bay Area, right? And doing Lyft and Uber on the side for extra money. And I'd meet, of course, tons of software engineers. And they jump in the car. I'm like, oh, what do you do? You know, just making chatting, you know, and they'd be like, oh, I'm a software. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, what is that exactly? I looked it up, and I was like, oh, you know what? If I was younger, I'd probably choose this profession. It looks like it has a lot of, upside. I'm like, I'm probably too old, forget it. And then and I kind of thought, well, why? That's kind of silly. Then at this place I worked, I was in charge of updating a piece of the website. It was all through a CMS, content management system, and like WordPress, but even simpler for dummies, right? And then I had to call the webmaster to fix something one day, and she showed me all the HTML behind it. I'm like, what is this? She's like, oh, this is HTML and CSS. And I'm like, this is nuts. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is what the internet is. And she's like, yeah, this is like how web pages are built. And I'm like, this is nuts. So I'm like, I have to learn this. And then that just kicked off like this cycle, this like new addiction, to be honest, where I'm like, I went to Code Academy, and then I just went like crazy. I'm like, oh, this is too much fun. And then I thought, if I can get paid for this, oh yeah, I got to do it.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely great. I like how when you don't just tell people to join Parsity, you tell them, hey, go and learn HTML and CSS and JavaScript on your own. You know, make sure that you have a real interest in and aptitude for this before you jump into it, because there is the possibility. I myself, I learned to code because my older brother had a Commodore 64. So that's what made me want to do it, because he would, um, let's say, he would creatively change the rules in the game, and I think creativity really and interest really takes you a long way. So,
Yeah.
speaking of that, let's go ahead and start tying the tie. So
Okay.
you probably already know this, but like what I like to do is I like to say, let's cross over under, and then we'll just do a parrot over the shoulder, and we'll leave it like that.
Okay.
And then that's just step one. So
Okay.
let's go ahead and continue. One thing that I really, really liked, that made me follow you in the first place, was your honesty, especially your belief that not everyone should code.
Yeah.
How did you make that part of your message?
Just being it's like everybody shouldn't do everything. It's just a weird idea to me. Like everybody should learn to code. Do we tell everybody they should learn to be a plumber? It's like that actually would be a much more useful skill. But we tell people, hey, everybody should be a plumber, because no, you shouldn't be. You should do what you want to do. Also, tech's a weird profession in many ways. I think I don't have a lot of experience in other professions, honestly. But what I've noticed is people that tend to do well in tech also write code as a hobby. I
Mm.
noticed that for many other people that I meet, they don't do what they do outside of work as a hobby. And this, as you know, changes super fast. Like you've done this for 25 plus years. So you've seen
Oh, you're trying to age me, man.
us.
Let's just say 20 plus.
20 plus. So you've seen like a lot of history or like things like JavaScript or JScript or things that I've read about. You've seen like how fast it's changed, and like you have to keep up with these things no matter what your seniority is. Like even if you're a CTO, you have to be aware of what React is and kind of understand it at some level. You don't have to be able to write React. But all I'm saying is like this is an industry where you got to keep up with a lot of stuff. I don't think it's for everybody. I also think that if I'm being honest, everybody is starting at a different place. If you've never
Mm,
used a computer in your whole life and you don't like reading, or maybe you're, like my brother or something, he's a music artist. Would he do well in this profession? I don't know. I've told my brother, my cousins, I said, do ultimately where your kind of skills take you. I think that everybody can be good at something to a point. That's my opinion, that you can probably learn to be good at a certain point. But if you're fighting against your own capacity and ability to learn and do something that you don't like, I don't think it's worth your time to do it. Because I think even if you do get into the industry, I don't know if you're going to want to stay. And I've seen that happen. I remember this guy taught, he got his job. He's like, I hate this. And he quit. And now he's a police officer and much more happy.
mm. Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. That I think we forget about the human side of tech, right?
Yeah.
We're all individuals. We have our own interests and aptitude, and even uh, you've mentioned that you got a book on HTML, and
Mhm.
that wasn't the way that you learn. You're
Yep.
a big advocate of YouTube. I'm
Yes.
actually quite the opposite. I read a book and then that's just how I learn. But different strokes for different folks.
I do like
Uh,
books, and it's funny because I'm kind of going back on that. Like, books are, in my opinion, probably a better way to learn, because I feel like people take time to construct their thoughts in a book, and it's not like on the internet, anybody could say anything. So I tend to prefer books like when I'm learning a new subject, because I just trust them more. Maybe that's,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's different tools to learn. One thing that you actually wrote recently a post about doing a rag app,
Yeah.
and I went down the rabbit hole just talking to Chat GPT about,
Mhm.
oh, explain to me how these vectors work. Explain to me how it compresses the vectors. Explain to me
Yeah.
all this
It's
stuff,
kind of
and
fun.
it was amazing.
That's
And
cool.
I think you've mentioned that ChatGPT is good for conceptual learning, right?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I'm still learning how to use it, but I like to talk to it. I use the voice feature, and I'm like, "Hey, here's my understanding of how this works. Is this accurate?" And sometimes, like, I'm like, "Oh, cool. Maybe I know this better than I thought." And sometimes, like, "Okay, good. Glad I didn't say that on a show like this and come off completely wrong."
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I did. When I asked it to explain vector compression, I
Mhm.
said, "Oh, well, I don't know, the high dimensional space, of course, was way over my head. So I said,
Yeah,
well, oh, but this is sort of like if it was three-dimensional space, if it was like this, and it was like, yeah, exactly, you get it, you
yeah.
know?
Doesn't that feel good?
Oh yeah, it's totally good. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be able to write a full LLM, but I
Yeah.
understand definitely the concepts and that building a RAG app using Pinecone, that's definitely something I'm looking into for an app I'm working on.
Oh,
But
that's so cool.
that's
That's really cool to hear. Awesome.
yeah. So let me ask you this. Why do you focus on building complex software instead of cookie cutter apps? What makes that so important in today's job market?
Yeah, have you ever like looked at a bunch of resumes, or and then you see everybody's like built the same four apps? It's like Movie Finder, To Do app, clone of some other app, and there's nothing wrong with these things at all. Like we definitely have done some of these in Parsity because they're good to like learn on, but it's one, hard to stand out. Two, you're not really exercising that part of your brain that needs to be creative in a technical way. And so when I think of like complex software, I'm like, okay, can you kind of construct a solution to a problem you may be familiar with code, right? Like, so we have people. So one of the projects we do with people is like, hey, you present a project, you kind of lay out the system design, you get some feedback on it. We'll go through some feedback, talk about the technology choices, talk about the design, and then have you build an MVP of this project. that will take you a lot further because one, now you can't use the internet as a crutch because if you're building a movie finder, something that's been built a million times, it's too easy to fall back into just kind of copying and pasting and just composing pieces of code off the internet. So in order to build something like quote unquote complex, which is, pretty subjective term, but it's something that like that's unique, that you can use. And sometimes people say, hey, this might be a small business that you want to start. I usually tell people build it with the intention to sell it. Even if you have no intention of ever selling it, build it with the intention to do so. Because I think that's going to teach you a lot about like the right mindset to have, especially if you want to join startups, which are typically more open to hiring risky candidates like juniors.
Hmm.
Startups are risky, juniors are risky, and they want people with a product mindset. So if you can come in there and saying, hey, I've built a product, I've launched it, and now I'm in the process of trying to acquire customers, at least I know kind of how that works, that can be a really big selling point if that's what you're into. Some people are entrepreneurs and they want to do that. Many people say, no, I'm just going to build something that I just think is cool for like my mom. That's cool too. You solved a problem for somebody, you know?
Okay. Parsity is built on around one-on-one mentorship, not large classrooms. So why does that model work better for the kind of transformation you're trying to create?
I think in my opinion, it's really the only model that works for professionals, especially busy ones. The classroom, I think, can be useful. It's also difficult to have a lot of people at different stages in a classroom learning. This is not like school where we all went to sixth, seventh grade, and you're at the next grade, and you have some base knowledge that you all have, because we have people that have come from boot camps that didn't get the outcome they wanted, and we have people that have like, hey, I know some HTML and CSS. Having those people in the same class would not work. And also because we use a custom curriculum, some people are like, I want to go more into back end or mobile development. Some people are like, I want to take a more traditional full stack web development path. That's also difficult. That's impossible to have in the same classroom. So the one-on-one mentorship allows it so that you're not only learning at your own pace, but then you're also learning with somebody that knows you as well and can offer you assistance like based on your knowledge. Because what I've seen at really large campuses where I've worked at like 3 or 4 boot camps before this, like in the last 10 years. And there was one like a big classroom, and like half the people got it and half didn't. And like we're still moving. Like we're not stopping. You're just screwed, And I felt bad for those people. So to me, that model doesn't work super well. It works
Yeah,
for a lot of people.
yeah. I mean, I get that. When I was in college and taking programming classes, it was like trying to do kindergartner or something. It was insane.
Yeah, for you, right? You're like, I already know this stuff.
No, no, no. I had already done like real functioning
Yeah.
programs, like geez, and they were taught. I don't know. People didn't get hexadecimal numbers or something, and I was like, what? This is like counting. It was. I don't know. I couldn't do it. I would have, and that's what really really awed me about Parsity. I could have used Parsity when I was like 15.
Yes.
But
I'm beginning to think
the
we need
the
to.
internet wasn't exactly there at the
You're
time.
right. Yeah, I'm thinking we need to start trying to get deeper, because we're like all about career changes, but I realize there's also a lot of people that aren't career changers that just don't maybe want to go to college, can't afford it, and just want to learn practical skills.
Well,
Yeah,
not even necessarily, can't afford it or don't want to go. I think having been to college, what made me drop out of Howard was that I wasn't being challenged by my programming classes, and I wasn't
interesting.
interested in my non-programming classes. And I was thinking falsely that the world was a meritocracy, and I said, well, I will just take my talents directly to South Beach. And guess what? It didn't work that way, right?
Um,
Um, but something like Parsity would have been great for me at that time because it would have given me the career clarity that I needed because I already knew exactly what I wanted to do,
mm,
but it would have been tailored to me, not going through, learning arrays, which I already understood. It would
yeah,
have been directly to understanding how to work with other people, how to use Git, how to um, you know do the types of things that I didn't already know how to do.
yeah.
So yeah. Oh, that reminds me. Let's go ahead. We're about halfway through
Okay.
here. And I just want to remind people that this is a live stream. And if there are people here who are just getting here, we're talking with Brian Jenney, program owner of Parsity. And if you have any questions, put them down in the comments below. I can see them right here. So it looks like you want to get to the next step. Yeah. So let's
Okay.
so right now it's parrot on the shoulder, right? What
Mhm.
I like to do is I like to find the widest part of the tie, and I fold it over. And right here, this is going to be the front of your bow. And then I pull down this parrot, and then now I have a different animal. I have an elephant. See, since mine is two colors, you can see my ears and my trunk. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And
That's
then so if you have a nice elephant, that's going to be a great tie. And just to keep things nice and awkward, let's go ahead and ask some more questions while you hold.
all right. All right.
Internships seem to be a turning point for your students. So, what do they learn in those real world scenarios that tutorials can't teach? And how do you help them push through moments of imposter syndrome when things get tough?
Oh man, the internships are really interesting. They're great, but they're tough. I mean, just being honest, like it really stretches people. And I'm dealing with that right now. So I'm doing the PRs, the pull requests, and along with the CTO of the current company that we're working with. And yeah, people are like afraid to even expose their code to others. Like, hey, am I doing this right? I don't want anybody to see this until I think it's right. And I'm trying to tell them, like, look, one, this is a mutually beneficial relationship, right? We're essentially, if I'm just being completely honest here, we're offering free work to a company. So this is they understand that this is a learning experience for you that you can use on your resume and your LinkedIn, and they're getting some free labor, right? So one, we have to come in with that intention. You're here to learn and do the best work you can. It's not expected that you're going to be operating as like a seasoned software engineer. So as long as we have the expectations correct, that's one thing. And then we also say, hey, here's just how teams work. Like here's the software development lifecycle, which I actually need to do a better job of explaining to people because I'm seeing on this team, people are like, my before I get my code reviewed, I want it reviewed. I'm like, no. That's what the review is for. Like we're going to see all the problems in your code. We're going to have a discussion in GitHub, and then we're going to, and then we're going to make it into a state where we feel comfortable releasing it. Like don't overthink it, right? Like I see people get in their head a lot. And that's where I kind of come in to give them a little bit of like booster saying, hey, if you have a problem or we need to talk, let's get together. We also have some students who are going to be more experienced than others. And we say, hey, who can we pair each other with to do the work? But yeah, it's as mental as it is technical. And the biggest things people struggle with is Git and learning a really massive code base. Like, oh, this is way bigger than any code base I've seen. And then of course, and then feeling the fear of being judged. If in that,
Yes.
yeah.
But what I say is fear is it's it's a guidepost. It's letting you know you're learning, and that's
Mhm.
especially if you're a junior programmer. You want to embrace that fear. It's letting you know you're going further than you expect. And if you weren't afraid or people to see the code, that means you don't care. You should care.
That's a great point. Yeah,
You
that's a
should
really
care.
good point. Yeah, you should care. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's a great way to reframe it. I should tell people that because I think that's it does show that you feel some pride in your code, as you should. I mean, I'd be lying if I said every time I start a new job and I'm doing my first pull request, I'm freaked out. I'm like, what are they going to think of me? Like this is
Exactly.
my
They're
introduction.
gonna judge you.
They are.
Literally.
They quite literally are going to judge me. Yeah.
But I would say getting a job is harder than doing the job. So assuming you've gotten through a job interview where you've done the same thing but worse,
Yeah.
pull request should be easy.
Yeah, that I would. That's kind of my impression. Many times, I went to a really small startup that I just left, and I'm in a new startup that I just started at. And yeah, the first day, I was like, oh man, I made a PR, and it got just like ripped apart. Super duper smart guy I'm working with, and he was excellent, but his PRs are always really rough. Taught me a lot though. It was like really great learning experience working with him for the last almost year.
Nice, nice. So you make the path at Parsity intentionally challenging, full of discomfort, real world projects, and career preparation. How do you see that tying into the long term success for your students, especially when it comes to actually getting hired in today's market?
Yeah, that mental fortitude is you're going to need that because this is not 2000 or or 2020, that magical period where it felt like jobs were abundant and people were getting hired really quickly and there was more demand than there was talent. Now we've evened out and it's difficult, I think, for a number of reasons, but you'll have to play the long game here. Also, I think expectations have risen in general. If I'm just being honest, especially for juniors, it's like you need to know more than just how to code your way out of a paper bag. Most roles tend to be full stack. The interview process tends to be more rigorous, what we expect people to know, which is unfortunate in many ways. But yeah, you're gonna need to have like that toughness, that grit that you're gonna need to survive the time period it takes from, okay, you've learned to code, now let's try to get you that interview. You're going to fail some interviews. How do we get past that and learn from them? And then how do we finally get you into a job? And then how do we force you to negotiate? How do we get you to negotiate when you're freaked out and you just want the job? You're like, I don't want to negotiate. Just give me whatever. I'll take it. What if they take the job away? So it's dealing with all these mental hurdles that people have, and try to keep them just sane during it too. That's a big thing. I mean, I really believe that most of the game we play is mental.
Oh yeah, of course. Now, speaking of mental, this last part is mental.
Oh,
So what I'd like to do is grab the elephant ears
mhm.
here, and I pull that up.
Yep.
Actually, you know what? I had this backwards. Um, but you should be able to poke a hole in the back with your finger,
Mm-hmm.
and then you pinch with your thumb, and then you should be able to just pull the base of that trunk through that hole. That will create the back loop for the tie, and then you just straighten it out, and then you you straighten it out with the finger, adjust it a little bit,
And I have
tighten it up.
butchered my tie bit, but
That's okay. The first time can be a little rough. You're very, very close. What you needed to do is I'll untie it and retie it. I'll show you.
I'm gonna.
And no. So what I'm gonna do, same thing over. Pair it on the shoulder, right? And what I'm doing is you can see like it's just barely at this wide part, right?
Mm-hmm.
This creates the elephant ears. I pull the trunk, and you can see how the elephant trunk is nice and thin over here.
Mm.
I'm pulling right here with my left hand, but you looks like you're left-handed. Is that true?
No, it's just the camera's in this weird thing, and
Okay.
now I
But you pull with well, I'm pulling with my left hand and I'm using my dominant hand to find that hole and I have my index finger. But when I just pinch with my thumb and get the fabric here, see, then you can pull it through the base. But
Mhm.
what looks like you're doing is your cross part. It looks like you need to adjust the size of your tie a little bit
I
because
think
you're
so.
not getting it doesn't quite look as
This is
as
like the
clean as
interviews
mine.
where you practice and then like you do really well in the practice and then you get to the interview and you don't and you can't do what you just did.
You know what? Here's the thing. It could be nerves. You said you've been practicing
I
this,
was
and
practicing.
so if I'm telling you to do something slightly different than what you learned, then I can understand how you can get in your own way. It's just like what you said, you know. It's
Exactly.
mostly mental.
Yes.
Actually, this is
Also, what's weird is I'm trying to look in this camera is like at the different angle or different like things. So it's like it's this weird like cognitive dissonance where I'm trying to use what hand I think is the right one. It looks like the left on here. So
oh, you don't have your camera, you don't have your image reversed.
something like no, I don't. I should have done that because I'm like, no, why is this
I have my camera reversed.
okay?
Yeah.
I might do my best here. No.
Yeah. But the thing is, well, I don't know. But when I learned how to tie a tie, oh, this is actually so funny. I I made all of my groomsmen
Mhm.
wear like real bow ties. I said, no, clip-on ties are only if you're like under 9 or something. I think my nephew just barely made the cut, and he got to have a children's tie.
Okay.
But I didn't know how to teach them how to tie a tie at the time.
Oh, wow.
So there's nothing I could do to get them right. But it looks like if you're not able to pull like it tight and
Yeah.
get the thin part
Oh,
of it,
I've just
your tie
butchered
is
this.
probably
Yeah.
too short and you need to adjust the size of it.
I think
But you can tell because when you have that elephant part,
ah,
the nose of the trunk should be nice and skinny.
okay. I think I'm gonna butcher this a bit, but
No, attitude, man. You got to think positive things, man. You got to think positive things.
almost there. And come on, come on. What the heck? Oh, come on. Almost there.
It's that third part is so tricky.
I know. It's crazy. I was watching a video on this last night and I was like, okay, okay, now I kind of get it. I kind of get how this is done. And
Hey, there we go. You got it. Just
hey,
tighten it up like that back end, like
yeah,
pull it, and then it'll tighten up that middle part, and you'll have a tie.
come out. I'm afraid to touch it. Okay.
No, no, it's simple. All right. So you've got the front part right here that's a double, and then you've got this back part, which is a single. You
Okay.
hold that single so you're not pulling it out, and then you
Uh-huh.
just loop your hand through the double part that's in the back, and you pull it. Not the part that's this part, but
Okay.
the other part, and that'll tighten it.
Okay.
Do keep in mind we're gonna do a string grab. Is that what you want it to look like?
I think this is as good as I'm gonna get it without doing it in the mirror in my house.
It's the yo.
I can keep going.
Let me ask you this: what's one surprising challenge you faced building Parsity, and what did it teach you?
Surprising challenge I faced building Parsity. Honestly, it's been the marketing. That's been the by far and away the most difficult piece of Parsity. There's a lot of boot camps going out of business right now. In fact, we're one of the few that's partly accredited. We're getting accredited in the state of Indiana at this point. It's a long story. But getting federally accredited is for only large programs. We're super small. It's just me. I don't have investors or anything like that. It's just me and my business partner and a few contractors. So it's weird because I feel like we have a great program. I mean, I know we do. I know that the numbers tell us that we do much better than most, but it's difficult to find and attract people because honestly, the boot camps that are selling the like dream of like get rich quick in 3 months, they're honestly doing better. They're getting tons of students. They're getting more than they know what to do with. Meanwhile, us, we can take less than 100 people a year. Max, that's the max we'll ever take. Is like probably around 80 people a year, and we struggle to hit that number. So that's been the most frustrating thing, if I'm being completely honest. And it's been, it's difficult because it's like, man, we know we have such a good program, and I'd love to be getting people in that we know we can help out. So yeah, that's been the struggle I have in the business.
Okay, well, that's the thing. Well, I guess the advantage of focusing on quality over quantity, and the
Mhm.
fact that you do have such a limited number of people that you can bring through the program, uh, that definitely reduces the market size. Um,
Yeah, that's the
yeah.
thing. It's interesting. It's an interesting game of like, I'm not a salesperson. Neither is my partner. We know we're tech people, and I think that was part of the issue I'm seeing now, that like a business requires not just the product, but it requires like the the vehicle to drive people to it, and that's a whole different game to play. And I'm having fun learning that, but it's ultimately not what I like to do. I don't like to do high pressure sales or get people on the phone and like, hey, you got to buy, and ruin their credit. That's just not my thing. So, and for a lot of boot camps, that's exactly what they do. That is their scheme. They get you on the phone and they pressure you to buy. People sign away their life, and then they get out of these programs with nothing to show for it. And these programs do, they're just so large that they can do this kind of thing.
Yeah, but with a 92% placement rate and with you guiding people on negotiating, I think Parsity sounds like a great investment, and not just for career changers, but um, I think would be great for anyone who is absolutely certain that they definitely want to be a software engineer. You
Yeah.
know, yeah. Let me ask you this: how do you evaluate um, the talent of the people? As I've heard you mention, um, if you go to college, right? They
Mhm.
don't just accept anybody.
Yep.
There's tests that you might have to take. They're going to look at your GPA. They're going to
Mhm.
really evaluate your ability to be successful in that program before they start you, right?
Yes.
So how do you do that? What's your approach to that at Parsity?
Yeah, we have a phone conversation at minimum with the people to assess like their GitHub profile if they have one. If they don't have one, we often will do a baseline test to see kind of where their skills lie. What we really want to suss out mostly is, are you here for the right reasons? Do you have the right expectations for how long this can take? And do we know enough about you to think that you are the kind of person that will likely have a good shot at this? We don't exclude people based on their previous work history. We do exclude people, though, based on what we learned through our phone call with them. If we find out that they're like kind of wishy washy and we say, why do you want to do this? And we find out the only motivation is money, we tend to see that those people don't do very well and will politely decline if they do want to move forward. And then sometimes, unfortunately, we've even let very few times this has happened, but a person will get into the program, not take it seriously, and we're happy to basically say, maybe this is not the right program for you. Here's a refund, and you can find a different place. That keeps the quality high because we really do value that. We have a small amount of students, like I've said, and the quality of people is really high. And the community is an important aspect too. So you have other people in there that are top notch that you're also working with that are going to help you become better. So when you see what other people are doing in the program, it kind of creates that healthy competition, where you're saying, oh, wow, Laura's doing this. Oh, damn, Ricardo's doing really well on this. Oh, wow, they did really well on this assignment. If this is the standard, then I need to reach that standard. And you're keeping it really high. So you're making sure that, and then that you can have those great success stories and those high placement rates, because we're kind of, we're cherry picking in many ways. But we also are doing it ethically. We don't want people that are coming in. We, as much as we like to take people's money because we're a business, we just know it's not a good long-term strategy.
Oh, I don't know. I would say this ethically, and I believe I've seen this in a post. It's it's you posted about that the tool that cheats at the
Oh
leak code
yeah.
test. Yes, yes, and that's the thing. Yeah, it's
Oh,
cool, but the thing about being a software engineer and really anything is that trust is extremely important and extremely fragile. Trust is like the air you breathe,
right.
and you don't realize how important air is until you don't have it, and you never want to be on the wrong side of that.
Yeah, right.
And that's the thing. I think that um if someone is paying me my exorbitant fee,
Hmm. Yep.
they're really trusting me with their vision and believing that I can bring that vision into life, that I can align the tech with their business goals. And there's not really much of a way to be able to evaluate that directly because, yeah, sure, I might talk well, but
Hmm.
how do you really know that what I'm delivering is going to be sufficient and good? you really are going to have to trust me. And I always say, trust me, I'm an engineer.
Yeah.
Um, I don't
Yeah.
I'm I don't know. I just don't feel like expending the mental overhead to lie to you.
Uh,
Because
I
I'm
I feel
lazy.
you. And maybe that's why we don't have as many students as we could have either. But I get what you're saying, right? Like why to tell a lie just compounds, right? Like then you have to keep lying to keep
You
the
got
lie.
to remember your lie. No one has
Normalized.
that kind of memory. And
Yeah.
and like I said, I don't. I don't know. I care about someone else's opinion well enough to tell them an untruth? No, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be myself.
I feel you. I think that's the safest. It's the easiest thing to be. I've learned that in many different areas of life when I had a very different life before this. And the best thing, I'm like, if you're yourself, it's simpler. Everything is simpler at that point. Be yourself. I wish I had known that as a young person. I think I lost my way in life trying to figure out who I was supposed to be, trying to fit myself in these categories or and lie, and that got me in a world of trouble. So whole other.
No, no, no. I get it. I realized I was a nerd from an early age, but I resisted that for so
Yes.
long,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
only the only thing that really helped was just to dive into it. Everything that makes me different. It's not that I'm deficient. It's a strength. I should um what's the word? Lean in
Lean into it.
to my differences.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Exactly.
being a self-taught software engineer means that I can do something that most people can't. and
Yes.
and that is it's interesting because it's kind of an invisible superpower. It's not
Mhm.
obvious that I can do it. It's only after the fact when I say that I can do the things that I when I do the things that I said I could do, it seems like I'm lying until it's actually done, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's it. I've always been impressed by people that are self-taught. That's always been like, man, it's impressive. I mean, I think that most people find that very impressive.
Well,
It's nice.
even being self-taught, self-taught doesn't teach you the social skills, which is again um, why I would have liked a program like a Parsity, because social skills aren't just talking to people. Git is a very social program, right?
Yes.
Because if you're the only contributor to your repo, that's very, very easy. You need to learn how to resolve those merge requests. You need to
Oh yeah.
um, be able to evaluate other people's pull requests, and you have to.
Mhm.
Um, so there's so much there. So yeah, this is a great conversation that we're having. We only have a few minutes here. I would say I want to remind people this is live. So if you have any questions, then you can put them in the chat. And let me see. I don't really see anything right now in chat.
All good. I think if people want to hit me up on LinkedIn, I'm always open. I like getting questions too. It's funny because like I talk about a lot of things that I think people should know, but I get questions sometimes, like either in the podcast or like through email, and they're usually pretty interesting. That there are things sometimes that I take for granted or that I wouldn't think to like explain.
Yeah. Well, tell me, what's an interesting question you got recently?
I get a lot of questions now about like one, is it like worth coding? Like, should I learn to code with AI? Right? Like, should I even like learn at all? Like, should I just quit? And then my question back to them is always, well, what would you do otherwise? Like, where are you going to hide exactly? Sales, marketing, a lawyer, fixing cars. I don't know where there's like a safe place to hide, and I don't know what the future holds either. Maybe none of us will have a job, but I don't know, and neither does no one knows. So I'm kind of like, that's a strange way to plot out your future and career based on like news articles essentially. Doesn't seem like a very smart way to go. The other one is like, I want to, a lot of them are like around like, I want to be in cybersecurity and I don't know any coding. How do I get, and like some of these fields I feel like are not really open as much to people that are like just going this. You can absolutely self-teach yourself into cybersecurity. It's just that the path is much more difficult in my opinion, and has like some clear steps, like usually in tech support, and people will have to learn like database administration or things that I don't really know about. But a lot of the questions like these more niche career paths, and people wanting to skip over the software engineering side or skip over learning to code and go directly into some like specialization. Like, oh, I don't want to learn JavaScript. I just want to learn mobile development. And I'm like, what?
Good luck with that.
Like, well, it's
No,
whatever. I'll go.
I feel like gosh, mobile development. It's interesting because there are so many code free tools or code light tools that you can learn.
Yep.
But I think that the natural curiosity that makes someone a good engineer in the first place is going to make someone want to understand the code just to give them more flexibility and to be able to do those things. And as far as AI goes, I personally see AI as being a tool,
Yeah.
and I always liken it to a sewing machine, right? There was a time before the sewing machine, everything had to be hand sewn,
Mhm.
but it was long, tedious work. And a sewing, and when you have a sewing machine, it doesn't mean that someone who doesn't know anything about fashion can magically make a pair of pants. It just
Yeah.
means it's a lot less grunt work to do that, and it really frees people who um, are fashion designers to be able to be far more productive and focus on the creative aspect of fashion rather than the mechanical aspect of putting fabric together. And then, of course, um, because of the sewing machine, there are far more garments available, and it
Mhm.
created this whole fashion industry. And what
Yep.
I believe is that because we have AI that's going to allow people to vibe code and create um, uh, it's going to allow people to create a lot more software projects than exist now, and it's going to create this entire industry. But you're going to need real software engineers, just like you have
Yeah.
an entire alteration industry that exists because of that sewing machine, right? Prior
Correct.
to that, there was no alteration because everything was
Mhm.
hand sewed to a custom, right?
I
So
like that analogy a lot.
and as far as AI goes, you should learn the tools that exist,
Yeah.
and definitely AI is a tool. I think that just as a writer is going to use spell check and they're going to use a word processor as opposed to a typewriter.
Or a pin and quill.
Exactly. You know,
Yeah.
modern tools, you're going to have to learn Git. You're going to have to learn your IDE. You're going to have to learn AI as well. It's just going to be yet another tool that people use in order to become productive software engineers. But, um, having spell check doesn't mean you don't need to learn words.
I
You,
like that's
you
a
get
great
what I
analogy.
mean?
I'm gonna steal that one. It's a good one.
Oh yes, of course, of course. Information is free. I'm sure that I don't know. I just make analogies because I it's something I really learned in tech support. You've got to take your everyone's not using the same terminology,
Mhm.
so I usually fall onto an analogy that, or try to make an analogy that normal people are going to understand, because it's not going to help me to throw a bunch of acronyms at you. I'm
Exactly.
sure you understand the acronyms, but I want to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about. We
Yeah,
want
I
this to
I like
be
that.
a very accessible show.
For sure. Absolutely.
But thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you being here. This is the end of our time.
Thank
So
you so much.
um, I'd like to thank all of my uh, um, all of the viewers for being here. And we do this every Thursday live at noon Eastern. So I would like you to remind you to come back next week and see our guests. We've got a great guest for you next week. So that will
Awesome.
be all. And we'll see you again next Thursday. Bye.
Thank you. See ya.